Welcome to Echoes of Battle, and in this video we will be covering the 10-year Trojan War and what happens to Odysseus. Thank you for watching and enjoy.
To understand the geopolitics of the ancient Mediterranean around 1200 BC, we have to look at the map. The Mycenaean Greeks dominated the Aegean, but right at the edge of their reach sat the city of Troy. Troy controlled the Dardanelles, the crucial maritime choke point connecting the Aegean to the Black Sea. Every merchant ship had to pass through their waters. This geographic monopoly funneled immense wealth behind Troy's walls and created a severe economic imbalance with Greek commercial interests. Modern historians generally agree that if a massive coalition of Greeks did sail against Troy, they were fighting over these trade routes and imperial expansion. While taxation and maritime monopolies likely ignited the real conflict, oral tradition discarded the economics. Human history chose to immortalize a mythological spark instead, a stolen bride and the vanity of the gods. The mythological origin of the war begins at a divine wedding. Eris, the goddess of discord, was famously left off the guest list. In retaliation, she threw a golden apple into the crowd, inscribed with 3 words, "To the fairest." Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite immediately claimed it. Zeus refused to mediate, so the choice fell to a mortal, a Trojan prince named Paris. Each goddess offered a bribe, but Paris chose Aphrodite, who promised him the most beautiful woman in the world. There was a significant political problem with this prize. That woman was Helen, and she was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. Paris traveled to Greece and took Helen back to Troy. Menelaus appealed to his brother, Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae. Years earlier, all of Helen's former suitors had sworn a sacred oath to defend whichever man won her hand. That oath was now activated. Every major Greek king was compelled to answer the call. Legendary heroes like Achilles and Odysseus were drafted into a massive coalition, launching an armada of over 1,000 ships across the Aegean. This massive mobilization fused imperial ambition with divine mythology, creating a narrative where the movements of queens and kings became indistinguishable from the whims of the gods. The Greeks landed on the Anatolian coast and constructed a massive fortified camp, but they couldn't breach the city, and the Trojans couldn't drive them back to the sea. The result was a grinding 10-year military stalemate. We have a clear picture of how physically devastating this combat was. This is the Dendra armor, a set of Mycenaean gear dating to the 15th century BC, constructed from thick bronze plates and topped with a boar's tusk helmet. For a long time, historians doubted anyone could actually fight in gear this restricting. To find out, researchers working in experimental archaeology forged exact replicas using the same bronze alloys, matched the original weight, and put modern soldiers inside them. The soldiers engaged in continuous combat maneuvers for 11 hours straight. They successfully completed the simulation fueled entirely by a historically accurate Homeric diet of beef, goat cheese, olives, and wine. These simulations suggest the conflict described in the Iliad had a basis in brutal, physical reality. Modern soldiers proved that Bronze Age combat was an exhausting endurance test, one sustained by the very diet Homeric described thousands of years ago. After nearly a decade of this attrition, the story fast-forwards to the final weeks of the conflict. This extremely narrow window of time is the exclusive focus of Homer's epic poem, the Iliad. The poem centers entirely on a crisis of ego. King Agamemnon publicly insults Achilles by confiscating his war prize, a captive woman named Perseus. In protest, Greece's deadliest warrior simply withdraws his troops from the fight. Without Achilles, the Greek lines collapse. Troy's greatest defender, Prince Hector, pushes the coalition to the brink of defeat. To save the ships, Achilles' closest companion, Patroclus, borrows his armor to fight, only to be killed by Hector in the chaos. The emotional climax of the poem arrives in the dead of night. King Priam of Troy secretly infiltrates the Greek camp, falls to his knees, and begs the man who killed his son to return the mangled remains for a proper burial. This is where the Iliad ends. It offers no celebration of military triumph or final victory. It is an intimate tragedy about the destructive consequences of pride, grief, and revenge. Following Hector's funeral, the stalemate quickly returns. Achilles continues his rampage until Paris shoots him in his one vulnerable spot, his heel, killing the greatest of the Greeks with a poisoned arrow. Realizing they can never breach the walls by force, Odysseus devises a deceptive solution. The Greeks construct an enormous wooden idol to hide an elite strike force inside its hollowed belly. The rest of the Greek army burns their camp and pretends to sail away in defeat. The Trojans celebrate and drag the massive offering into the city. That night, the hidden soldiers emerge and open the gates for the returning fleet. The sack of Troy was absolute. Temples were burned, the king was slaughtered at an altar, and the civilian population was killed or enslaved. Only a handful of figures, like the hero Aeneas, managed to escape the burning city. 10 years of siege ended not with a victory on the battlefield, but through a calculated massacre that left the Greek triumph overshadowing the very ideals of honor they claimed to fight for. The once great city was completely erased as an independent power, leaving behind only the stone foundations that archaeologists would uncover centuries later. But the Greeks did not get to enjoy their spoils. Their sacrilegious violence during the sack cursed their return voyages. Leaders like Agamemnon finally made it home, only to be assassinated by his own wife. The architect of the victory suffered a different kind of punishment. Odysseus, the mastermind behind the wooden horse, was denied a safe return to Ithaca. His grueling, decade-long struggle at sea forms the basis of Homer's second great epic, the Odyssey. It is the story of a war hero forced to wander the Mediterranean, desperate to reclaim the life he left behind. He navigates a gauntlet of mythological terrors, blinding a Cyclops, resisting the Sirens, and sailing between Scylla and Charybdis. By the time he finally reaches his own shores, every single member of his crew is dead. Humanity's foundational epic has endured for millennia because it refuses to glorify the conquest. Instead, it demonstrates the devastating cost of war, where even the cleverest victor must endure another decade of suffering just to find his way back to where he started.